Do you remember the first time you saw one of your favorite bands live?
Well, I do.
And for me, that band was
Hammerfall.
And that year they were on tour with Sabaton. I always like to tell this story, but I'll never forget the first song that Hammerfall played that night, which was Never Forgive, Never Forget.
Never forgive, never forget.
And just the energy and the impact, the intro plays and they're hyping the audience. And then the lights come on and there's the band. And they blast off into that first song.
Good evening, tempers of Ludwigsburg. We are Hammerfall and this is what we do.
And it was just so cool and I loved it so much. And for me personally, it was something that really inspired me to want to write music and to eventually, perform live and to experience what that was all about. And Hammerfall too, I think is one of those bands that has been very influential in introducing a lot of people to metal or to heavy metal or power metal. And so how cool is that too, and these guys have been doing this for so long and they're in their 50s now and they're still out there grinding and writing albums and touring the world. So hats off to Hammerfall. I love these guys. I love their music. I loved it from the first time I heard it. And in this video, we're going to review their brand new full-length album, Avenge The Fallen. I'm going to share some of my thoughts on some of the songs, some observations. If you have any on the album or on Hammerfall, or if you'd like to share with us your experience seeing one of your favorite bands for the first time, and what that was like for you and what it meant to you, please share that with us too, because I think that would be really awesome to hear. But let's get right into it. We're going to look at this album and what these guys have just released here. Hammerfall, Avenge the Fallen. Let's jump right into the first track. Alright, so the first track on the album is the song Avenge the Fallen. Now, quick thought. I heard an interview with the band. I can't remember who it was. It might have been Oscar. But somebody mentioned that, Hammerfall is a power metal band. And they didn't like that. They said, we're not power metal, we're heavy metal. And I always remember that in that or those comments in that interview, because to me, at that time when I heard this interview, I was just sort of getting into this style of music, a lot, and discovering a lot of new bands. And I thought, well, that's interesting, because what my understanding of power metal was, Hammerfall really represented that sound, sort of broadly speaking, but not to the guys themselves in the band. I think it was a different generation. They've done this for a long time, and to them, it's heavy metal. They grew up listening to that style of music, and the bands that were sort of influential to them. Power metal wasn't a thing, and really it wasn't until more recently. But that's a side note. Avenge the Fallen kicks the album off. And, right away you're getting the classic Hammerfall sound, lots of chants and sing-along. It's a headbanger.
Whatever it takes, I'll see it through. Whatever I
do for you. Great guitar riffs. I love Oscar's writing style. And to my understanding, Oscar Droniak is the driving force behind a lot of, or most of, the writing for the guitar, the rhythm guitar at least, which is the foundation of their sound, in my opinion. They kick it right off. For me, the first song on the album is huge. It sets the tone for the whole thing. Usually, it's one of the most impactful songs on the album. I think Avenge the Fallen accomplishes that. I definitely enjoyed it. Right off the bat, too, I have to say the production value on the album is top notch. Hammerfall always sounds great in the studio. Whatever they're doing, it works. I know I heard in an interview with Ola England, which we'll talk about a little later in the video as well, that they like to use Engel. That's one of the amps they like to use for the recording of their albums. I think Oscar mentioned that he likes to use Sandberg guitars, although on this album he actually used a Jackson Rhodes. Oscar's known for playing Rhodes guitars, but apparently he had an old Jackson, and he said, you know what, let's pull this out, and he got that guitar going and liked the sound of it sufficiently that he opted to use it for the recording of this album. So yeah, song 1 is another great song, very, very much in the Hammerfall sound. It's one thing I do like about Hammerfall, album in, album out. It's you know, we've almost come to know what to expect from these guys, but I'll tell you what, they always deliver. Tracks 2 through 4 on Avenge the Fallen are a very good example, in my opinion, of what Hammerfall does best, and that's up-tempo, ass-kicking heavy metal. And these songs, too, in my opinion, always translate very well live. And, of course, these guys have their art down pat from the studio to the stage, and they always nail it live. And The End Justifies, great track. Up-tempo, hard-hitting. The musicianship on these songs is excellent as far as the, you know, in the world of this style of music. They do it very, very well. The drumming is precise and excellent, and really the drumming, in my opinion, about 3 albums ago, really, it was always great, but I know they started to take a closer look at it, and it just kept getting better and better. Track 3, Freedom, is the name of the song. In a recent interview, Oscar Droniak mentioned that Joachim writes most of the lyrics and all the vocal parts, of course, and he has a very iconic voice, and he's excellent at what he does. Lots of falsettos, high-pitched singing, and he just nails it. Apparently, the overall theme, if there is one for the album, according to them, is one of freedom, broadly speaking, and sort of the spirit of heavy metal and the community and the spirit of freedom. So I thought that was cool. I do like the song Freedom quite a bit as well. Track 4, Hail to the King. If there's a song on the album, if there's songs on the album rather that are sort of singles or, you know, the most catchy or ear-grabbing songs, I think Hail to the King is definitely one of those. Classic Hammerfall in Hail to the King. Just that catchy, sing-along, epic chorus that we all love out of Hammerfall. They deliver it yet again in this song, but definitely strong through tracks 2 and 4. Lots of great stuff in the middle of the album. Track 6, we get to Hope Springs Eternal, which is sort of the ballad on the album, and anybody who's familiar with Hammerfall and their work knows they typically will have one ballad-esque type song per album, and generally just beautiful melodies, very well-written, thought-out songs. Hope Springs Eternal gets the job done. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Track 7, Burn It Down, classic material from these guys. Rise of Evil, one of my favorite songs. Track 9, definitely a hard hitter, some great riffing. And just listening to track 9, Rise of Evil, I really realized how influential this band has been on me as a songwriter, and how I some of the different riffing that I write for my songs. And I know they've been very influential for a lot of songwriters out there, I'm sure, but there's just a certain style. Whenever you hear it, like, you just know right away that's Hammerfall. That's their style. And that's one of the things that I love about heavy metal, and playing that style of guitar, is that there are just so many different possibilities with how you can make your instrument sound, and how you can choose to go about structuring songs and structuring the guitar riffing. Also, of course, with any Hammerfall album now, smattered throughout are the phenomenal guitar solos and leads from Pontus. He is just an absolute pleasure to watch live too. He's just so, he makes it look so effortless, and definitely from someone who's primarily a rhythm guitar player myself, just like Oscar Droniak and Hammerfall. I mean, that's my passion and love, is primarily rhythm guitar. I'm not the greatest lead guitarist by any stretch of the imagination, but man, watching a guy like Pontus do his thing is just a treat. Hammerfall in general, to me, is just classic heavy metal, and I consider them power metal, although they don't consider themselves power metal. But it's just the classic sound, classic guitar technique. It's almost textbook in its writing and the way it's recorded, but I love it, and I always have, and I know a lot of people do. But yeah, Rise of Evil is definitely one of my favorite tracks. And then they finish off strong, track 10, Time Immemorial, another good one. And that's all the tracks on the album. I keep looking to my left over here to the TV screen at the track listing here, just so I can remember. But looking back through the tracks, what stands out to me, in my opinion, Avenge the Fallen. Hammerfall always comes out swinging with the first track, so you're going to get a banger. Avenge the Fallen is one of those. Track 2, also one of my favorites, The End Justifies. And Freedom, Hail to the King. Track 4, probably my favorite song on the album is Hail to the King. I'm a sucker for the big sing-along power metal chants. I love the epic sound and the big sound, and I'm just a sucker for big rock and big heavy metal, and Hail to the King is definitely one of those. And, you have your ballad there in the middle with Hope Springs Eternal, and they just keep going strong. Hammerfall always just keeps the pedal to the metal, man. That's the name of their game, and I love that about them. Their albums are always very well thought out, well put together. Something you can put on and enjoy from start to finish. And Avenge the Fallen. I have enjoyed this album a lot, and definitely urge you to give it a listen. And if you've never heard of Hammerfall, it's definitely a good place to start. And if you look back through, if you start here and you go back through their discography through the years, you won't, in my opinion, you won't be disappointed. And definitely was a pleasure listening to this album. So, the new Hammerfall album, Avenge the Fallen, that's my review. I enjoyed it very much. There's definitely some new Hammerfall classics on there. Get out there and have a listen, check it out. Let us know in the comments your thoughts on the album. But before we go, I wanted to ask a quick question to everybody and sort of get some feedback, if we could. In a recent interview with Ola England, Oscar Droniak, who's one of the founding members and guitarists for Hammerfall, made some comments and sort of got me thinking. He really brought up something that I have thought about recently in the last year or so, and it's something that I know Glenn Fricker has mentioned on his channel, but it came up again in this interview with Ola. The issue of, is it better to write a full-length album or to release only singles or maybe EPs? Oscar's point of view was that as a band, Hammerfall likes to write full-length albums.
I think that is, we still, to this day, even in the day of YouTube and Tidal and everything in Spotify, we still think in terms of an album.
A full album, yes.
Yeah, that's where we came. I don't think that these are stripes that will never wash away. I don't think, because that's just how we were wired.
Yeah.
That was just kind of their thing. It's almost like a tradition, which I can really relate to, because for me it's kind of similar. Like, I'm old school that way. I like the full length album. I grew up waiting for the bands that I loved, to release that next album, and it was the anticipation, and man, there was just nothing like putting that record in and hearing that first track, and you just like savored it until the last track, So, like, personally, I love the full-length album way of going about things. It's how I tend to go about things with my bands. I prefer to put in 2 or 3 months of work and have that 10, 11 track album to throw out there, and it's just sort of, it's the way I like doing it. But there's also the idea that in this day and age, a lot of people just don't listen to full length albums anymore.
For me, it's, I start with the first song on the album, finish with the last song on that album, then I move on to a different album. Yeah. That's how I listen to music.
Yes.
I know people don't do that anymore, most people, and it's very obvious if you look at the streaming.
How that works, yes.
The first songs, and then it trickles
just
down.
Dips. Yeah, it dips.
It does. It doesn't matter what song you put on the end.
Yeah.
So that's, we are always going to think in terms of an album. And
that maybe it's better to release singles or a 3-song EP, or maybe shorter albums are the way to go. But anyhow, leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.